The queen chose her youngest. She had 2 sons, twins, 6 years old. A hooded man held a knife and told her to pick one. The other would die. She begged. She screamed. She offered her own life instead. He said, "Choose, or they both die." She named the youngest, Mela, her baby, because the older twin, Jaehaerys, was the heir, and she thought, in a mother's agony, that the heir must live. They killed Jaehaerys anyway. Some say they always intended to. Some say they wanted her to carry the weight of choosing for the rest of her life. She did. It destroyed her. That is what the Dance of the Dragons became. Not a war of crowns, a war of children. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Blood of the Dragon. Episode 6, Dance of the Dragons. When family became fire. When Viserys died, the Greens moved before the blood had cooled. Queen Alicent's servant brought her the news before anyone else. By dawn, Otto Hightower had the small council behind locked doors. Every member except one declared for Aegon. The exception was Lord Beesbury, 80 years old, the only man in the room who had been there when the oaths were sworn. He stood and said he would not sit in a council that plotted to steal a dead king's word. He was removed, and depending on which account you believe, he was thrown in a dungeon to die or pushed from a window or had his throat opened at the table by Sir Criston Cole. In any case, he was the first blood of the dance. For 7 days, the Greens sealed King's Landing. They locked the gates. They divided the royal treasury into 4 parts and hid them across the realm. They found Prince Aegon, who had not asked for this and did not particularly want it, and they told him he would be king. On the 7th day, he was crowned in the Dragonpit with the crown of Aegon the Conqueror and the sword Blackfyre in his hand. The small folk cheered. They did not know the old king's wishes. They only knew what was in front of them, a king. On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra received the news and collapsed. She went into early labour. The child, a girl she named Visenya, was born twisted and dead, with a tail and a hole in her chest. And then came the fury. Daemon placed his father's crown on Rhaenyra's head. She was crowned on Dragonstone before 300 witnesses. Her war council assembled. Prince Jaehaerys, Prince Lucerys, Prince Daemon, Lord Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, the richest man in the realm. 2 crowns, 2 courts, 1 throne. The realm held its breath. Then the boys were sent. Jaehaerys, the elder, flew north on his dragon Vermax to treat with the Arryns, the Starks, and the Manderleys. Lucerys, the younger, flew south to Storm's End on his dragon Arrax to treat with Lord Boros Baratheon. Rhaenyra made them swear on the gods that they would act only as envoys, not as warriors, not as soldiers. She sent her sons into the sky as messengers. One of them never came home. When Lucerys arrived at Storm's End, a storm was breaking over Shipbreaker Bay, and in the round hall of the Baratheons, he found that he was not the first to arrive. Aemond Targaryen was already there, one-eyed, smiling, standing beside the largest living dragon in the world, Vhagar. Lord Boros had already pledged to the Greens. Aemond greeted his nephew as Luke Strong, the bastard. He asked if the boy had pissed himself, or if that was just the rain. And then he drew his sword and told Lucerys to cut out his own eye. An eye for an eye, a debt from childhood, when Lucerys had taken Aemond's. Boros refused to allow blood in his hall, but he did not stop what happened next. Lucerys ran. He mounted Arrax, a young dragon, small and quick, and flew into the storm. Aemond mounted Vhagar and followed. Arrax was fast. Vhagar was ancient, vast, and slow to turn. On a clear day, the smaller dragon might have escaped, but the storm drove them both into chaos. Wind, rain, lightning. The dragons screamed. Arrax, young and panicked, turned and spat flame at Vhagar, a kitten hissing at a lion. Vhagar answered with fire of her own. And then her jaws closed around Arrax. The dragon fell in pieces into Shipbreaker Bay, Lucerys with it. He was 14 years old. Whether Aemond intended to kill him or only terrify him, Whether Vhagar acted on instinct or on command, the histories disagree. It did not matter. The boy was dead, and the dance had drawn its first true blood. When Daemon received the news, he spoke 4 words. A son for a son. He hired 2 men, a former sergeant of the city watch called Blood, and a rat catcher in the Red Keep called Cheese. They knew the tunnels, they knew the passages, they knew how to get into the Tower of the Hand, where Queen Helaena lived with her children. Cheese led them through the walls. They found Helaena. She was putting her children to bed. 3 of them, the twins Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, 6 years old, and little Mela, 2. Blood held the knife. Cheese told the queen to choose which son would die. That is what revenge looks like in Westeros. Not a duel, not a battle. A mother weeping in a nursery with her children staring up at her, and a man with a blade waiting for an answer. She chose Mela. They killed Jaehaerys. They sawed his head from his body in front of his mother and his sister. Helaena Targaryen never recovered. She stopped speaking. She stopped riding her dragon Dreamfire. She stopped living in every way that mattered years before she actually died. The dance was no longer politics. It was poison. In the blood, in the walls, in the cradle. And then came the dragons. Sir Criston Cole, the Lord Commander who had crowned Aegon, marched south with an army into the Crownlands. He moved from castle to castle, burning those who would not bend. At Rook's Rest, a small black-held castle, the garrison sent a desperate raven to Dragonstone begging for help. Rhaenys answered. The queen who never was, passed over at the Great Council, passed over by Jaehaerys, denied the crown that should have been hers by every measure except one. She was 60 years old. She climbed onto Meleys, the Red Queen, and flew toward Rook's Rest alone. It was a trap. Cole's army was bait. Hidden behind the castle, waiting in the woods, were Aemond on Vhagar and Aegon II himself on Sunfyre. 3 dragons above a burning field. Rhaenys could have fled. She saw Vhagar rise from the trees. She knew what it meant. 1 dragon against 2. Melees against the largest beast alive and the most beautiful. She did not turn. Melees and Vhagar clashed in the sky. Fire against fire. Sunfyre joined the fight. The 3 dragons tangled and fell, crashing into the earth together. The impact killed hundreds on the ground. When the dust settled, Melees was dead. Rhaenys was dead. Still strapped to the saddle, her armor fused to the dragon's neck. Sunfyre was crippled. Aegon II was burned so badly that half his body was ruined. He would spend months in a coma, his skin peeling, his bones exposed. Even the victors lost. That was the lesson of Rook's Rest. That was the lesson of the dance. In a war between dragons, there are no winners. Only fire, only ash, only the people who burned beneath them. So tell me this, was there ever a moment the dance could have been stopped? Or was it inevitable from the day Viserys closed his eyes? Write it in the comments. And if you want to hear what came next, when dragons fell into the sea, when bastards stole fire from the sky, and when one man leapt from his dragon onto another in the most legendary act of war Westeros has ever known. Subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter. Because next time Daemon Targaryen makes his final choice and the sky falls.